Hey there! Today we are cooking with zucchini, aromatic vegetables, ground meat, and crackers. I'm Jessica. What do you make of this? Stuffed zucchini. So let's get one thing straight. I hate zucchini. In fact, this recipe is the only exception to that rule. Not only does it taste really good, but it's also a great way to get a solid serving of vegetables. It's a good way to stretch a little bit of meat to feed a lot of people. And you can also make these in advance and stick them in the freezer, making it a lifesaver on busy nights. Let me show you how I do it. So the first thing we're going to be doing is carving out these zucchinis to make a hollow so that we can actually stuff them. I'm just going to get these two out of the way, and we'll get going on this first guy. So I want you to think of this zucchini kind of as a long, skinny pumpkin that we're carving into a jack-o'-lantern, except instead of a jack-o'-lantern, we're going to be carving something that looks like a canoe. Let me walk you through this. For step one, use a paring knife or any really small knife that you have in your kitchen. You want to use small knives for small projects. This is basically your cook's equivalent of a surgeon's scalpel, and you need to be able to get in there and really do some precise work, which you can't do if you're using your biggest butcher knife. So step one is going to be to just snip off either end of your zucchini. Like that. And now to hollow these out, we're going to be carving from what looks from the top like a rectangle. So you want to go in about a ½ inch from the end of the zucchini. Do not slice all the way through the entire thing, but make a slit that runs about the width of the zucchini on either side, like so. Then the next thing we're going to do is be running our knife along the length of the zucchini. And so for that one, you want to go in at about a 45-degree angle, and you will understand why in just a moment. So we're just basically going to run along the length and connect those two smaller slits. Same thing on the other side. 45-degree angle, running along the length. And what will happen is what from the top is going to look like a rectangle as you're cutting is actually going to pop out and look like a triangle. See that? So this is actually going to be part of our filling. Set it off to the side. We're going to be dealing with that later. So now what you have is the start of the hollow of our canoe, so to speak. The next thing you do is just take a small spoon, and I do like to use more of a teaspoon size for this because you can really get in there. And we're just going to start scraping. So working your way from the top, just start running your spoon through it and scraping out all of the seeds, basically the zucchini guts. And if you find any spots where it's not scraping quite as well, you can actually use your spoon to really dig in there and scoop it out, kind of like if you were using a melon baller to scoop out bits of melon. So just keep working at it. And I do find it works best if you focus all of your efforts on one half of the zucchini. And then once you've scraped to about the middle of it, flip it over and do the other side. So you don't want to go completely through the zucchini, otherwise it's going to fall apart when you go to cook it and stuff it. You just want to be hollowing it out. Like I said, it really does look a lot like a boat when it's finished. I'm just going to keep working at this. I find too, depending on the size and the ripeness of the zucchini, some of these are much easier to hollow out than others. If you do go through too far though, and you can start to see a little bit of green peeking through the zucchini, don't be sad, it's not a lost cause. You just have to be a lot more careful when you handle it once it's cooked because it's going to be more delicate. But you can absolutely still use it. You haven't completely ruined your zucchini. Just make sure you are very delicate with that work. Okay, I'm just gonna get a little more out of this top half. And once you're done scraping, you will see that you have a nicely hollowed out little zucchini canoe. And so I'm going to just take this guy and put it up on a baking sheet. And for these zucchini guts, hold on to these because this is actually going to be part of our filling. But because of the scraping process, it's already very finely minced, so there's no extra chopping there. And that's awesome. Okay. So in the interest of time, I actually have a second one already almost done. All I'm going to do is snip off either end. It's kind of a lengthy procedure as you're doing all of that scraping, so I figured you've seen me do it once, let's move along. Okay, number two, going up on our tray. So for this, I should actually mention, it's going to get you a full zucchini per person, which is great. Like I said, a lot of vegetables. If, however, you're cooking for somebody who's not going to eat as much, like maybe small children, or you just want to have a lighter serving, maybe to use for lunch the next day, or even just a light supper, you can actually use one whole zucchini and turn it into 2 servings. So the alternate method, once again, I'm going to just snip off either end, like so. Instead of doing the boat carving method though, I'm actually just going to run my knife straight down the middle of the zucchini, cutting it exactly in half the long way, like that. And then, as before, we're going to just scrape out all of the insides. Now, it's going to be very tempting to start at the top and run your spoon all the way through it, but if you do that, your filling is going to fall out on either end. So just like with the other zucchinis, you do want to start at about ½ inch in, and that's going to be, you can even use your spoon to kind of make yourself a little guide, poke some holes in there. That's going to be the part that you want to start scraping out. So let's get scraping on these guys. And this is going to scrape a lot faster because now you're only scraping out the insides of half of a zucchini at a time. So be very careful here. And by the way, you don't have to just stuff zucchini. Pretty much any vegetable that you can hollow out will work for this recipe. So I've done it with tomatoes, mushroom caps, eggplant is really nice, even bell peppers. But do be aware that with bell pepper, because there's no actual inner filling to take out, you will need to use an extra bell pepper so that you can chop that and use the chopped part into your filling. We will do this second half. Come to think of it, that is a testament to how very good this stuffed zucchini recipe is that I could use other vegetables, but I choose to use my dreaded zucchini in this because once I do it this way, it's not dreaded anymore. I actually cannot wait for these to finish cooking. Okay, so this is our first half of a zucchini, hollowed out, and now it looks very similar to the other two. It's just a little bit smaller. So onto the pan that goes. Once again, get this out of the way. And we'll do the exact same thing with our final zucchini. So I'm going to just make myself some little guides here. And I will start scraping. The other great thing about using a spoon as opposed to a knife for this procedure is it's a lot harder to cut yourself using a spoon than if I was using that paring knife. So if you've maybe got some little kitchen assistants who are helping you out, this is a great project for them because they can absolutely do this and you don't have to worry about any horrible accidents. Okay. Go through that side, get the rest out. And oops, actually, I took it a little bit too far. I don't know if you can see that there's that little patch of green there, so that's your sign that you have gone too far. So like I had mentioned earlier, you're just going to have to be extra careful once it starts cooking because that part is going to be the part that's going to want to break on you as you're handling it and as you're stuffing it. But like I said, it's not a lost cause. Onto the pan it goes. So I am going to just get that part out of the way. And I'm going to grab a cloth and just dry off these zucchini fingers because the next thing we're going to do is season and you definitely do not want wet fingers for that process or else you will be the one who's seasoned and not the zucchini. Okay, get that spoon out of the way. So these now are our nice four, it's really 3, hollowed out zucchinis. I am just going to go in and season them with some salt. Number 3, number 4, some pepper. They don't need a lot, but I find if you season them, it's going to just give them a little bit more flavor. And as I've already mentioned, I do think zucchinis need as much help as they can get in the flavor department. But once you start doing this kind of magic, oh, it gets so much better. This is a little bit of garlic powder. And we've also got some onion powder. And you may have noticed a trend here where I use a lot of salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powder. For me, these are just the magic 4 spices that whenever I put them on any savory thing that I'm cooking, it just instantly amps up the flavor and makes them taste so much better. Okay, so that was the onion powder, and as I'm talking, it's just driving me nuts. I have to fix it. There is just this jagged little part to the zucchini. There we go. That looks nice. I just like it to look pretty. It makes pretty food tastes better, you know? Okay, so at this point, These are looking really good. They're hollowed out, they're ready for stuffing, but before we stuff them, I actually like to pre-cook them a little bit to give them a head start. It makes the final cooking process go so much faster. So I'm just going to get them into my oven here at 450 degrees for about 10 minutes. We're just looking to soften them up a little bit, and that is going to make it go a lot faster once it's time for the big cook. So while those cook, we can get ready on chopping up our other vegetables that are going to be going into that filling. All right, so our zucchinis are cooking away. Let's get started on some of these other vegetables for our filling. So I like to do just a small onion. We'll do 4 zucchinis very well. And I'll show you a neat little trick for cutting onion a lot more efficiently. So you want to start by running your knife through that top leafy part. Get the outer skin off of your onion. Some days it comes off, other days it's just the most aggravating part of the entire cooking process. This is a good onion. All right, I'm gonna actually leave that root on and just run my knife straight down the center of it. And this is actually going to hold the onion together while we cook. So remove about 1 whole layer of onion. I always like to take off more than I think I need to. I think I've said this before, but the one time you don't is the one time you wish you had, because onion papery bite is not good. So it's always worth, in my opinion, sacrificing a little bit of onion. Okay, so the next thing you do now that you've got your nice clean peeled onion is you're just going to run your knife into some skinny lines the length of the onion. I'll try to get my hand out of the way here so you can see what I'm doing. And it's basically going to make almost like a seashell kind of pattern. And then, because the onion is broken into layers, what happens is as you slice along the width of the onion, it automatically dices for you. How cool is that? So I'm just going to get this at a pretty fine dice. And now that we're doing some bigger cutting, we're using a bigger knife. Get your fingers out of the way. And this little bit, just get rid of it. It's not worth the risk of a lost fingertip. Get that out of the way. And so again, we'll just make some nice cuts running one way, and then right through the other way to get a nice diced onion. And hazard out of the way. Okay, so these are going to go into our filling bowl, and just try to break them up a little bit. They will break up as you're cooking, but it's one less thing to do while it's cooking. Like so. Let me get my hands wiped off here, and let's do some garlic. So I am never going to be so presumptuous as to tell you how much garlic to put in your recipe. You season with your heart when you're cooking with garlic. I like to use about 2 cloves, but if you like it garlicky, put more. If you don't really care for garlic, put less, use none at all. It's all good. There we go. These guys can wait off to the side. So for garlic, I like to start by just snipping off the woody ends. And then a fun, very satisfying, and very effective way to get the peel off the garlic is just to put your knife flat, give it a little push with the palm of your hand, and that will actually crush the garlic, and it makes it a lot easier to get the peel off. Let me do that one more time. I didn't crush it very well. There we go. That popped. You'll actually feel it pop, and that's how you know it really got in there. Same thing for this one. There we go. That was a good smash. It's kind of fun. And then, now that you've got nice flat garlics, similar to what you did for the onion, you're just going to run your knife one way, run your knife the other way, and you want to get this garlic pretty finely minced up. It's going to definitely cook down as it's cooking in the filling, but the smaller the pieces, the more evenly it's going to distribute through your filling. We'll do the same thing with this other piece of garlic. Run the knife one way. There we go. Bundle it all up nicely and go the other direction. There we go. That also goes into our bowl. And then last but not least are these little pieces of zucchini that I told you to hold on to. I'm just going to do very similarly to what I did for the garlic and the onion. And that's just going to be to slice them into long, skinny strips and then run your knife through the other way. I got these guys in my way. There we go. Whoop. This big guy, I can actually get an extra cut out of that piece because it was really big. There we go. And cubes. There we go. Just like that, and I'm gonna run my knife through this other little piece that I carved out. Really, you just want everything into small pieces. It does not have to be an exact science. This is home cooking. It doesn't have to be perfect. You want them to be about the same size though, because that makes sure that they cook evenly. But if one is a triangle shape and one is a rectangle shape, I don't think anybody's coming after you. Okay, those are the veggies done. So what I like to use to bind the filling together is some kind of breadcrumb. So what I'm using today are crackers. And I have actually done this with any cracker that has been left over in my cupboard. Even different flavored crackers can actually kind of help change up the filling a little bit and make it really good. You can also just use canned breadcrumbs, and one time in a pinch, I actually cooked a couple of pieces of toast and then ran my knife through it until it was really fine. So you've got some flexibility here. As long as it's some sort of crumbed bread-like product, that will do the trick of absorbing some of the moisture and helping your filling to clump together. So for crackers, I like to just take a zip top bag. You get these in, and then just crush them up. So you can just smash them with your hand like so. Because they're crackers, they just fall right apart on you. Flip it over, go the other way. The zip top bag just kind of helps keep everything together so you're not chasing cracker crumbs across your kitchen 3 weeks later. I've done that. You don't want to make that mistake. The bag will save your life. There we go. And then once those are nice and crushed up, you now have about a half to a third of a cup of cracker crumbs. I'm actually not going to use all of these. I only want about a quarter of a cup. So I'm going to just scoop out a generous handful here and sprinkle them over my filling. Actually, I lied. I want a little more. Let's say a third of a cup for this much filling. That looks good. All right, and these I can just save for another day and another batch of zucchini. We'll get those out of the way. So we've got the start of our filling. This is going to be going into our meat and all cooking together, and I'm going to show you that part next. Okay, so it's time to get going on the meat for our filling. I have got a pan getting nice and hot here, and to that hot pan, I'm just going to add a little bit of oil. I'd say that's about a tablespoon of oil, and we're just gonna let that get warmed up a little bit. It shouldn't take long because the pan is already hot. And to that, I'm going to be adding some ground meat. So today I am using chicken, but you can use pretty well any kind of ground meat that you like. And I'm just going to get that in the pan. That's the sizzle of success right there. That's how you know your pan is hot enough. Always a good sound. So I'm going to just get this spread out a little bit. And right now, before it has a chance to cook too much, I'm just going to go in and season it because this is the best opportunity we have to get as much flavor into that meat as possible. So I'm going to go in with some salt. And use a little extra just because I'm using ground chicken and it tends to lack flavor compared to something like ground beef. Some pepper. Same thing. Any ground poultry, I find you want to go a little harder on the seasonings just because it needs a little extra help. I'm also going to do some crushed red pepper flakes. So I like to do about a quarter of a teaspoon of crushed red pepper, and that's going to just give a little extra depth of flavor to the meat. And as usual, some garlic and onion powder. Always flavor wherever you can when you're cooking. The more layers of flavor you have, the more interesting it actually becomes. And then I'm just going to work that into the meat while it's still raw. And that will help to flavor everything. So get that moving around, and already we're getting some really nice color on that. You can see as I flip it, That's fantastic. We're just going to keep this moving until it starts to turn nice and brown. And we will be cooking this meat completely. So that's one of the cool things about this. Like I had mentioned earlier, you can freeze this once it's assembled, and that's because everything is already cooked. So really all you have to do is reheat it. So we'll give this a good mix. And like I mentioned, I am using ground chicken today simply because it's what I like, it's what I had on hand. But you can use pretty much any kind of ground protein that you like. So ground turkey, ground beef, ground pork. Actually, Italian sausage would be really good. I've never done that before, but I think the next time around I'm going to give that a try. And if you want a vegetarian option, you can actually just crumble some veggie burger patties into the pan. I like to do about 1 patty per whole zucchini. So in this case, we're using 3 whole zucchinis today. I would just use 3 patties of veggie burgers. And that will give you a really great vegetarian substitute for this. I'm going to try to get this as broken up as possible, just so it gets a really nice brown on it. Beef doesn't do this as much, but there's something about ground chicken, it just really likes to cling together. And it helps if you can spread it out as much as possible, just to get a really nice, even browning on it. There we go. That's starting to look good. I'm going to give this a nice mix. Now that it's starting to get some color on the one side, we'll let it start cooking on the other side. Try to flip that over. Oh, I've got a chicken overboard. I'm just going to leave that because I do not want to be touching raw chicken while I'm touching and cooking other things. That's just a one-way ticket to food poisoning town, and you do not want to visit there, let me tell you. Okay, so that's looking really nice. I'm going to just let that hang out and get really nicely browned. Try to break up some of these big pieces here. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to let that sit. I've got a wooden spoon, so it's fine to just stay in the pan. And while this cooks, I'm going to come over here and just start chopping up some cheese. So for this dish, one of the things that makes it so very good is that there is lots of gooey, melty, bubbly cheese on top. And really, what doesn't cheese make better, right? I like to use a really nice sharp cheddar on this because I find zucchini tends to be it's a very bland flavored vegetable, and it needs as much as possible to really bring out a lot of the flavors that are in it. So something like a sharp cheddar, smoked mozzarella, even like a pepper jack cheese, if you really like things nice and spicy, would be delicious on top of these stuffed zucchinis. So what I like to do is on just an average sized block of cheese, you usually need about 2 slices of cheese per zucchini. And I have found that sliced cheese tends to work better than shredded cheese does, because you'll see as I'm filling it. But what happens is shredded cheese will tend to fall off, and I mean, for me, I don't want any cheese left behind when I'm cooking. So the more I have actually on the zucchini itself, the better it's going to be, and then that way you just get a really nice dome of cheese melting all down the zucchini. So I'm going to slice about 8 slices of cheese here. That's looking good. And I try to do these almost the same thickness as my knife. So really what I'm looking for is, if you've ever bought like pre-sliced cheese for sandwiches, I'm looking for about that thickness. And really what you could do is even just buy the pre-sliced cheese and cut it into some narrower strips, and you're good to go. I just happen to have a block of cheese though, so I am going to do the economical thing and use up my cheese block. Might even do just a couple extra slices because I might need them, and if I don't need them, I'll probably snack on them in the meantime. I love cheese. There we go. Get that off the knife. That last slice is always really hard to get off. That looks good. So we're going to just come over here, have another look at this meat. And it's starting to get some really nice cooked color to it. So I'm really going to get in there and kind of attack it because I want to get this broken up as finely as possible. It will work a lot better with the filling that way. So bear with me here while I get this all nice and broken up. You don't want any big chunks of meat, because what happens as we stuff the zucchini is it's actually going to make almost a very smooth kind of filling. Everything blends together and melts together, and so each bite tends to be very uniform and very similar, which I find is quite nice in this dish. You don't want anything to be too different from the bite you had before it, because then it's just an enjoyable thing from start to finish. Okay. So this chicken just needs a couple more minutes, so I'm just going to turn up my heat. That looks good. And get this cheese nice and set up and ready for stuffing. I like to just kind of have things nice and lined up, because then it's easy to set up an assembly line. So we will just get that ready to go. Okay, so let's have another look at this meat now. Oh, that is looking gorgeous. I'm gonna give that one final good mix around just to make sure there's nothing sitting around burning while we're doing the rest. Okay, and then to this meat mixture now, we're going to come in with all of the vegetables that we chopped up, and they are just gonna go straight in. Change my grip here. There we go. And now we're just going to keep cooking this entire mix together, basically until the onions get soft. Let me get that bowl out of the way. There we go. So I'm just going to spread out the vegetables so that they're evenly spread on top of the meat for a second. And that's because I want to get this part seasoned as well. So just like we did with the meat, I'm now going to season this very generously with some salt, with some pepper. I'm personally going to add a little more red pepper flakes because I like my food spicy, but if you are not a big fan of the spice, use as much or as little as you'd like. Use none at all if you don't want it spicy in the slightest. And I'm actually going to skip the garlic and onion powder because we have the fresh chopped garlic and onion in here, and that's going to just sing beautifully. But what I do like to add is some Italian seasoning. So I'm going to go in with quite a lot actually for this recipe. I like to use anywhere from a couple of teaspoons all the way up to a tablespoon, just depending again on how much you like in your food. But this is just going to really bring out all of the different flavors of the vegetables very nicely. It's a good mix of just parsley, basil, oregano, rosemary. Every Italian mix is a little bit different, so use the one that you like best. And now that it's all seasoned on top, I'm going to give this a good mix and really get everything incorporated. So the beauty of those crackers, or any, like I mentioned, any kind of breadcrumb that is going into this, is as the vegetables sweat, as the meat juices start to release, it's actually going to get absorbed by those crackers, and it's going to make for a really smoother filling, but also a filling that doesn't completely and totally fall apart when you go to slice into your zucchini when it's dinner time. So it works, really just does a lot to keep the filling nice and consistent. That's looking good. So it's going to take a minute just to get these onions nice and soft. It doesn't have to be brown or anything crazy like that, but you do want it soft because once this filling is done, it's going into the zucchini and it's pretty much done cooking at that point. So you do want to get this to a nice palatable point. You don't want to be biting into a piece of raw onion. It would be very harsh and it just wouldn't be very good in this dish. So take the time to really make sure that this is cooked thoroughly before you stuff it into your zucchini. I'm going to just let this sit on the heat for a couple of minutes. And when about 2, maybe 3 minutes have gone by, we'll have another look and see how it's looking. Okay, so let's check and see how these veggies are looking. That is nice. So what I'm seeing here is that everything's actually starting to stick to the bottom of the pan. That's a good thing. That means that the onions and the garlic and the zucchini have basically started to melt into this mixture. So scrape all that up because that is actually a lot of really, really delicious flavor and you do not want to leave that behind. I'm going to work it off the pan a little bit and get everything stirred around. Yeah, that brown stuff right there is just pure flavor. You want that inside your stuffed zucchini. It's gonna be a good bite. Okay, now that that is done, I'm just going to grab a fresh bowl here so you can see how nice this looks. And I'm going to move the filling into a bowl because we do want this to be cool enough to handle. Let me get that every last bit out of the pan because you are not going to want any of this left behind. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna get this filling just kind of chopped up and spread out a little bit and let it sit for 5, maybe even 10 minutes because you do want it to be cool enough that you can handle it with your hands before we stuff the zucchini. So I'm going to just get all of this cleaned up and get everything ready, and I will show you how to fill these next. Okay, so everything is cooked and we are ready to stuff these zucchinis. So as you can see, they've gotten very nice and soft and everything is totally cooked at this point. So really, all we're going to be doing is stuffing these and getting this cheese melted. So what I like to do is use a small spoon for this job and just take a spoon of the filling and pack it in. And this is the time to really cram as much of it into the zucchini as possible because trust me, you're going to want every last bit of this into every bite that you take of the zucchinis. So I like to just go in front and back and pack in the first bit and then actually go in and do it a second time because you want these, it's a stuffed zucchini, so stuff it, right? It's going to make it so much better. There we go, get that filling in there. And then once it's stuffed, this is where I was mentioning I like to have the sliced cheese as opposed to the shredded cheese. You can just arrange these into little lines, and usually 2 pieces of cheese does perfectly. And what'll happen is it's going to kind of melt and then envelop all of the stuffing and make a beautiful, beautiful, every bite of zucchini taste so good. So we'll get this first guy back on the tray, and I'm just going to repeat the process with the other 4. I find for stuffing it helps if you just hold it in your hand because then you can kind of shimmy it left and right as you need to get that filling in there. And as I had mentioned, if there's any zucchinis that while you were hollowing out, if you take it too far, this is the stage where you're going to want to be very, very careful as you're stuffing them or they will tear and fall apart. Still good, I've had it happen and they're just not as pretty as they would be if they held together, but they still taste every bit as delicious. So by no means do you have to throw the entire dinner out just because your zucchini ripped. Okay, one more little spoonful there. Lay it down and just kind of tamp in anything that fell out. There we go. That looks good. A couple of pieces of cheese, like so. And we'll get that one on the tray. And then we'll do these 2 little guys as well. So these are the ones that I just cut in half and scraped out with the spoon. These are great for just a lunch, something lighter if you're feeding somebody who maybe doesn't have as hearty of an appetite as you do. Or maybe it's you. These are the perfect ones. So this one, probably only going to need 2, maybe 3 scoops of filling. And I'm just going to try to get it as packed in there as possible, but because this is only half of a zucchini, it's a little more delicate, so do be careful with these if you are making them. And same thing, a couple pieces of cheese here. Actually, I'll break that one off. And very gently into that pan. And the final one. So this recipe actually makes more stuffing than you will have zucchini. And one thing that you can do with your leftovers, I'm gonna give you like a 2-for-1 recipe idea, is grab a tortilla, roll up the rest of that filling with a couple slices of cheese, and you have got an amazing burrito. Either maybe beforehand, if you're prepping these in advance and you're not actually having dinner right away, or even just have for lunch the next day. It is so delicious. Or I'll be honest with you, most of the time I actually just stand over the kitchen sink and eat this filling straight from the bowl while I wait for the zucchini to cook. Chef's confessions. Okay, so we will get that nice and packed in there. This is the one that I had scraped out a little bit too thin, so I had mentioned, be careful, and I ended up doing it to myself, which I guess is kind of a good thing because now you can see exactly what happens when your zucchini is very delicate. So I'm just going to pick it up by either end and hope, and it's good. Okay, so I'm just going to get these guys into the oven and I'm going to let them cook for 5, maybe 10 minutes. Everything is already cooked here, so all I'm doing is melting the cheese. This is also the point I was mentioning, you can make these ahead, so you can absolutely make as many zucchinis as you want, from 2 all the way up to 200, get them in a sheet pan, wrap them in foil and stick them in your freezer until you are ready to reheat them. everything is cooked, so you just need to heat them until they're warmed through and the cheese is melted and you're ready to eat. So these ones though, I'm gonna be eating tonight, so I'm going to get them in my oven at 450, maybe even just under a broiler, and get the cheese nice and melted. You might need to play with it in your oven a little bit because everybody's is a little different, but again, it's cooked. All we're doing is melting the cheese. Okay, so the cheese is melted and I am so excited to show you what these look like. This feels like the big unveiling. So I'm just going to very carefully get this out of the oven and oh, look how beautiful those look. That cheese is so nice and brown and it's just run like a river of deliciousness over the entire zucchini. So let's get these guys plated up. What I have here is just a plate of homemade herb and chicken rice. I've actually got the video for this linked down below, so if you want to give this rice a try, you can also make it. And all I'm going to do now, yeah, these are cool enough to handle, is take these zucchinis and just nestle them down into the rice. Just like that. Basically floating our little boats onto a sea of rice. 3. And this guy was the very delicate one. Can we do it? Yes! And that is our fabulous, cheesy, melty, bubbly, stuffed zucchini. This recipe can be found in the description below. Please like and subscribe for more videos. I'm Jessica. Thanks for watching.